Happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, Jamie wants to know what you're doing on Valentine's Day.
We're starting to change the narrative and the dialogue we're having towards dating within the church. And I'm not here to do that. What do you have to offer? You have all this other crap that you need to deal with and that you are not even ready to be a good partner. And you're sitting and wondering why God hasn't sent you your person yet. Welcome back, everyone, to the On Water podcast. I am your host, Jin Choi. What happens with your relationship with God on your own in that vertical before the horizontal? Yeah. I was so excited for this new generation that's coming up that's like so on fire for Christ. I want this to be an outlet for people to feel encouraged and to know that God can do so much more with your obedience than you can possibly believe. Welcome back, everyone, to the On Water podcast. I am your host, Jin Choi. Welcome back to another episode. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm filming this on the day before Valentine's Day, which is super fun. But you guys, and Galentine's Day. What do guys have? Do guys have something? Manentine's Day. The Mandem Day, you know. But that's the thing. I don't think guys because I've been talking to a lot of my guy friends about Valentine's Day, and they're like, "Yo, pour me a shot and let me cry." Like, that's it. They're just like, "I'm just gonna cry all day," and I'm like, "Is that really how guys?" I am genuinely curious of is that how guys experience as a single male Valentine's Day? Is that how it works? I don't know. You guys let me know. I know a majority of my listeners are women, but if you are a man and you are single, please, that sounds like I'm looking for someone. If you are a man and you are single, please let me know how you experience Valentine's Day. And this is not an invite. But yeah, because I'm... let me know. Oh, let Jamie know. Yes, Jamie wants to know what you're doing on Valentine's Day, okay? Send me your name, your age, and your photo. Let us know. Anyways, so I that's what I was wondering of what guys do. But I think girls, we genuinely we're generally, more expressive with our affections towards platonic, same-sex friendships. And so, we have Valentine's Day, and it's super cute, super fun. And honestly, sometimes it's a little bit more fun, in my opinion. Sorry. But yeah, I wanted to, give you guys a Valentine's Day episode. Probably not what you're expecting, but this kind of, I wasn't planning on doing a Valentine's Day episode, but I had a thought about it after a conversation I had this past Sunday. So let me explain. So I had a conversation with one of my friends. She is a pastor's wife, and I will not name names because I'm not going to call her out and, tell her business. But basically, she gets a lot of people coming to her, as a lot of pastors' wives do, from people about their concerns, about their issues. And one thing that she says that comes up very often, as a lot of people know, is the frustration with the single life, right? And wanting to be in a relationship, wanting to have their person, especially if people are a little bit older and they are really wanting a relationship. And she kind of got a little riled up because she was like, a lot of people are bringing these things to me. And it's okay for you to want a relationship, but continually bringing up the fact that this is a problem in your life and it's something that you want so badly, but not looking at the other areas in your life that you kind of need to fix. Because she was saying how she would bring up other things. People would complain about not being able to, they'd be like, oh yeah, men are dirty and they don't know how to be men of God, and how are we supposed to find men of God if they're not going to act the way that they should. And then men are going oh, girls are so picky and they're so scary and they don't like to talk to guys, and everyone's complaining. Okay, everyone's complaining about each other, and it's a mess. And it's I think and this is for people who I hope people who are in a pastoral position, but also for people who are looking at their pastors for a sense of reassurance or an answer, they get tired too. So yes, go to your pastors for counsel, but don't go to them to vent, okay? Because they got their own issues, okay? And they're here to guide you and to shepherd you, and they're not here to just be your sounding board whenever you feel like you're uncomfortable, okay? So give them space. But all that to say, like, I understand that it can get frustrating, like hearing all of the, and like feeling like, oh, like I understand because she's married, like her wanting to have people be in relationships, be in happy relationships and find love. Like like we want that, right? But I understand the frustration when it comes to a point where it's like it's so like the dissatisfaction with singleness, it doesn't become a sense of like, oh, like I want to find someone to love and, spend the rest of my life with. It's I hate being single. I hate this. I hate my life right now. And there's a sense of like desperation. I think with from my experience with a lot of guys, there is a sense of frustration because they are expected to do a lot of things and girls are picky and like, like all of that stuff. And it's like hard to approach women, all that stuff. And I understand that. But I think there's still a focus on the frustrations of finding their person, right? And with women, what I notice is like there's like a sadness or like a lack of self-worth that comes with focusing on not having a relationship, and there's a it's less of a frustration compared to guys. It's more of like a solemn kind of feeling, like an emptiness feeling. And it's like perpetual, you know? And yeah, like there's a desperateness in the kindest way possible in a lot of single Christian people. And I'm being very specific in the Christian sense because I've been seeing a lot of like Instagram posts and stuff about Christian dating and stuff. And people are getting more and more honest about the ratio differences between men and women in the church and the expectations for women to change, like to either change their timeline or change their expectations. And like, it's kind of, we're starting to change the narrative and the dialogue we're having towards dating within the church. And I'm not here to do that. Go if you want that and you want to like have more dialogue of like how to, like it's not my favorite topic, to be honest. Like I'm gonna be so real here. Like sometimes I think it's like a we're beating a dead horse when we're talking about like, okay, so like how do I date properly? There's so much content out there that you can go and seek about how to date properly, how to pursue a girl, how to wait for the guy. There's a bunch of like just Google it, you'll find it. I don't want to really do that. I think what the Lord put on my heart after that conversation I had with my friend was some of the prerequisites that you should be thinking about as a single person before you even think about starting a relationship at all. Because one of the frustrations my friend had was like, they're complaining about being single, but then I bring up, hey, what about finding a job? And they're like, yeah, it'll happen eventually. But what's on my heart is like not finding a person, It's kind of like that's frustrating where it's like, there's so much. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna spread her business. What she said was like, what do you have to offer? Like, you have all this other crap that you need to deal with and that you are not even ready to be a good partner. And you're sitting and wondering why God hasn't sent you your person yet. When you have all this crap and you're dissatisfied, you're unhappy because you are a single person, when all of this crap is something that you could be focusing on so that you can be prepared to be the person that someone else needs you to be. And it's frustrating if like the sole idol is relationship and a partner, and you don't even know what it takes to be a partner, and you don't even have the character development to be a good partner. So what are you doing? You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a Valentine's Day episode, but it's got I don't know if you guys will like this type of Valentine's Day episode. You know what I mean? Because I have a few things that, as I was kind of like going through my own conversations I've had while, you know, like while people are struggling through singleness. I personally, I was single, but I wasn't struggling. You know what I mean? I wasn't really struggling in singleness because it's kind of like, I don't know. Like I found the other stuff. Like, you know, I already said, like, there's relationship and then there's all this other crap. All the other crap was what interested me. Like my development of relationship with God, seeing what God is doing through me being single, God using me in my financial freedom and being able to make my own decisions and having this independence. That stuff interested me. And I think that's why I never really struggled too much with it. Yes, there are moments where it's like, oh, that would be nice if someone else could do the dishes and I don't have to. But like, I think like that other stuff was just so interesting to me, that and my friendships and all my other areas where I felt loved and cared for was so interesting to me that it wasn't really a struggle. But I have heard and I've seen and I have experienced people who are in, like, they're in turmoil, like actual turmoil, because they want somebody to be there with them and for them. And they want to have someone that they call their person. And I understand that. And that is why, even if you like someone, so sometimes it's hard to even have a crush, you know? But even before you find someone that you like or find out someone likes you, I feel like I have these 3 different areas where I feel like they are prerequisites to Christian dating. This is my, you know, that meme where it's like, this is my opinion. That's me right now. Okay. I know people are going to be like, they're going to be saying stuff about what I think, but that mean, it's just my opinion. Okay. It's my opinion. And it is based on my experience as a therapist, as a couples therapist, but also individual therapist, with Christian people who are struggling with relational things, but also me knowing the tenets of Scripture and me learning and personally walking with people through this journey. And I stand by all of these things. And if you're like, I disagree with you, that's fine. I would love to know. I would love to know what your ideas are. But these are kind of my 3 I'm going to go from like bare minimum to like, okay, like Christian expectation. Okay. With these 3 different things, and I'll get into it. So the first thing I think is a prerequisite to Christian dating is you can't be broke. And you can't, and when I say you can't be broke, I'm not saying like, oh, like you need to be rich. I'm saying you can't be broke and you can't be dating, in my opinion. Okay. You can't be wondering if you can pay your phone bill and try to take someone out on a date. Right. You can't be, and this is why most of these things will lead to the idea that like before you're graduated high school, you shouldn't be dating. I think so. I think until you've graduated high school, because when you're in high school, you're still relying on your parents to pay for all your crap. So how, like, if you are dating to marry, and especially from a male perspective, I'll talk about men and I'll talk about women. Okay. I'll give you both my perspective. But in a man's perspective, if your mom is still doing your laundry, if your dad is still paying for your lunch money, if your parents are still paying for you to go on field trips, I think how do you And it's true. It's true. And if your parents are still doing that for you, and you're dating to marry, and if you're dating to marry to become a husband, and the husband that you're trying to be is a provider, and you still don't even know how to be a provider yet, then you shouldn't be dating somebody. Like because like I think you need to be prepared to be in the position that you are saying that you're going to end up in, right? And if you're saying that I am eventually going to be a husband, I'm going to be a provider, I'm going to be a protector, but you are still having your provision and your protection not coming from yourself but coming from somebody else, then you're not ready yet, right? And so like if you're in high school, you're pretty broke, because like even if you grew up in a rich family, that's not your money, that's your parents' money. You didn't make none of that. And it's so funny. This is just me going off on a tangent. But I recently watched the Marcelo Hernandez comedy special on Netflix. Oh my God, he's so funny. He's so funny. He was saying how like his mom would just go on rants sometimes, like reminding him of his position. And he was saying how his mom would be like, Marcelo, do you know that nothing that you have is yours? Everything's mine. Because you don't have a job. And your Xbox is mine. This is mine. All your clothes is mine. All of this is mine. You have nothing. Everything is mine. And he's like, okay, mommy. And then his mom would be like, good. Happy birthday. And I died. He's so funny. But like it really truly is that. When you are a kid, when you are young, and even if you're like 16, 17 in high school, you're still trying to figure out how to be independent. I think even some like university students, some college students, young adults, they are still there. They're still being provided for by their parents. They're still struggling with independence. And I think in those stages, you have to be humble enough to say that I am not ready to be in that position yet. And now for the guys, it's very easily said. Like I said, if you're trying to become, a protector and a provider, you have to learn how to do that before you can say that I'm going to sign up to do that and be that person for someone. For women, I think there is if you are used to the dependency of your parents, which in high school and when you're young and in certain situations, you are kind of left feeling like you are dependent on your parents, you are going to go into a relationship also depending on your husband to kind of do everything for you. I think you need to, as a woman, learn the weight and the responsibilities of what it takes to provide and to protect, so that you can live in gratitude when you're put in that position and you can submit to your husband with humility. Because I think for me, because I know like, okay, like paying rent, I know how it feels like because I do it. When I have to pay for different things, I know the weight of that. If I have to do something for my car and it's frustrating, I know the feeling. And so that if I have a husband who does all of that for me and provides for me in that way, I can submit to him with full humility, because I'm like, dang, he really loves me, because I know how hard that is. A woman who has never gone through the difficulty of providing for herself individually will never be thankful when someone else is willing to do that for himself and you, right? And so that's why I'm saying you can't be broke as a woman. You can't be broke as a man and try to date because your perspective will be wrong going into dating for marriage, right? This is why I said single Christian dating, right? If you're living out in these streets, not knowing Jesus, that's a different story. But like I said, this podcast is for people who want to be living up to the standard of Christian, right? As a Christ follower. And this is kind of what I'm setting. It's you can't be broke and taking aside the like high school, you don't really know how to provide for yourself yet type thing. You also can't be broken as an adult. So like, if you are like in your mid 20s, late 20s, and you don't have a job, I also don't think you should be dating. I think you should be focused on getting a job. I think you should be focusing on stability. And even if you like somebody, you are not in a place to be reliable enough for that person, right? And me personally, this might sound shallow to some people, but I don't care. If I always said, and I stand by this, some people will disagree, but I think if I'm dating someone, they need to have a car. In Toronto, okay, I live in Toronto. They need to have a car. If they are coming to go on a date with me, and they need to take the bus, and then we have to this is not a walkable city. This is not I am not dressing all cute so I can take the bus to go somewhere with you. Okay. And it might seem shallow, but it is the truth for me. Okay. Because I think having a car where it's necessary, like I think like I've like in Seoul, like in Korea, very walkable. The transit is so well done. And you can get anywhere and everywhere just by transit. And like a lot of people don't have cars, which makes sense. Same with New York, right? Everything's very walkable. You can go to a lot of different places. Makes sense, right? For me, in this city, in Toronto, if you do not have a car, then it's really hard to get anywhere. You know what I mean? And I think in my mind, it's not like, oh, you need to have a car. It's not even you have to have a nice car. It's just you need to have a car because it shows that you have a sense of responsibility. It shows that you can pay your bills. It shows that you can maintain a car. It shows that you are willing to put in the effort to be at a certain stage and to be at a certain standard so that you can treat the person with what they deserve. I don't deserve to sit on a bus. Okay? And that's the thing. I know people are going to be so angry at me, but I don't care. Okay? Because I honestly think that like, even if you're, in your mid 20s, it's hard to find a job. I completely understand that. Then put everything in your energy to go find a job, right? Go to your local church, be like, hey, I need a job, anything. Get me to clean bathrooms, like refer me to anything. Just get me a job so that I can save up and wait. Like, I truly think that, like, if you want someone who is deserving of the best, then you need to work really hard so that they can get what they deserve. So I think that's why women have a hard time empathizing with men, because they think that men are supposed to be the ones who are constantly bettering themselves for the woman, right? When in reality, it does really go both ways, right? I would never want my future husband to be with someone who doesn't have a job or can't hold a job, or doesn't have any motivation to be to be sufficient, right? Or to be reliable, right? And so I truly think and that's the reason why I'm saying, if you don't have a job and if you're broke, you shouldn't be dating, because you should be putting all of your effort into becoming a stable, sustainable person financially, right? And I want to use the example of Jacob as an example of that. That man worked 14 years for his girl. And I'm not saying that it's because he had to. Well, no, it's because he had to. Like, that was the cost of having Rachel. And I think that Jacob wasn't working for 14 years to be in a relationship, because he could have worked 7 and had Leah and be done with it. He worked 14 years for Rachel. He wasn't working so that he can be in a relationship. He was working so that he could have Rachel, that one person. And I think we shouldn't be working hard, desperate for a relationship. We should be working hard, desperate for someone that you can love and someone that you want to love, right? And in my opinion, I think if you really do want to love someone, you are willing to wait and you're willing to be financially the person that they need you to be before you even start anything with them, before they even enter into your life, right? And so, yeah, go get a job. Okay, we'll move on. The second thing that I feel like is a prerequisite to Christian dating is you need to have some level of self-awareness, understanding where your weaknesses are, having some sort of self-reflection on who you are and understanding who you are. And that's why it's better to date a little bit when you're older, because you actually understand more of yourself, because you're still, your prefrontal cortex is fully developed when you're 25. Okay. And my whole thing was like, I want to have someone who understands themselves, or at least is humble enough to realize that they have weaknesses, and they're willing to and able to communicate that to me to the best of their ability. And so, and this is one of the topics of conversation that I was having with my friend when we were talking about singleness, is that, like, we were talking about generational curses. And they're like, I think I only, like, my mom started telling me things about my family, about my dad's side of the family, about her side of the family, and just some of these like generational things that have happened throughout our both our sides of the family. And I was able to understand some of the generational curses, some of the generational illnesses, physically, mentally, once I learned that, right? And I was able to see within myself where I have some of those vulnerabilities. Like, for example, my grandmother had breast cancer. She has type 1 diabetes. My dad also had type 1 diabetes. And there's a history of high cholesterol and blood pressure in my family. And so I was like, okay, I need to know this. Like, I need to be aware of this. I need to know what my vulnerabilities are. I need to work towards so that this is not something that, one, affects me in the future, but also that I don't put on somebody else. Trust me, in the past, I never gave it a second thought. I wasn't thinking about like how my generational curses and generational illnesses would impact me, and I wasn't thinking about like, oh, like I need to be careful about what I eat and all that stuff until a lot later, right? And I think the one, and as I was talking to my friend, it's like you need to do your due diligence in being aware of where your vulnerabilities are. And that even it requires maybe to go to some therapy as a therapist. Like, it's kind of seems like an obvious recommendation, but I think it's necessary for you to know that you have blind spots and try to minimize the like, I guess the impact of your blind spots by doing your due diligence, right? And what I love is that when people come to therapy for in a proactive way, right? Where it's not like, hey, I'm finally in a relationship and like we're arguing terribly and this is like, and I get triggered and I shut down and I do all these things and I get hurt by like little things that he or she says and now it's like a survival thing rather than a proactive thing. But I think a prerequisite to Christian dating is being like knowing where your blind spots are and being someone you think someone is worth, right? It's like, I don't want to be with a broken person. So why would I succumb someone to my brokenness, right? Again, that's just not fair. And it might take a while. And I think sometimes we don't know our weaknesses until they are triggered or they are exposed in a relationship. but there's a lot of proactive things that you can do in the meantime. Like, I know in my, like, I know I have an issue with intimacy, and not like the sexual intimacy. Okay, relax. I'm talking about intimacy, like closeness. Okay. And it's because I have a avoidant attachment. So if I feel like people are getting really close to me, or if I feel like there's something to lose, I would rather leave the situation and pull myself away before I get hurt, right? With an expectation or a belief that eventually I'll get hurt, I'll remove myself from the situation. And my avoidant attachment has caused me to cut off a lot of people instead of resolving some relational issues. It has caused me to hurt people by being afraid to communicate my feelings and to honestly even respect their feelings, because instead of talking through things, I just leave, right? And me knowing that I'm an avoidantly attached person, I can now act differently when I know that it's happening. If I never really thought about it and never gave it any decent thought, I would hurt so many different people, and I wouldn't be able to change. And so I think one thing that you need to do is either take some serious time to reflect over the course of your life, um, seek counsel. I would suggest a therapist, but even if you want like a pastoral counsel, on at least being self-exploratory enough to understand what your vulnerabilities are so that you don't make someone else go through that, right? And oh, wee woo, ambulance. Okay. Now what? Oh, Beyonce, ambulance. Um, so the last thing that I will say is a prerequisite to Christian dating, in my opinion, is you need to be able to be a safe person. And I know that's hard to measure. It's not as easy as like, don't be broke, but like you have to learn how to be a safe person, because, and that you can kind of know if you are based on like the other relationships you have in your life, like your friendships, your relationships with your family, and your workplace. Just, are you a safe person for others? And if you can't confidently say like, yeah, like I think people have seen me as a safe person, someone who is reliable, someone who I can be comfortable with, someone that I can, see as someone who can be there for me. If you aren't that kind of person yet, because you are still relying on other people, because you're unstable, if you're unstable in your walk with God, if you're unstable in your health, if you're unstable in your mental health, if you're unstable in your social life or even ability to be around people, if you're unstable in more than 3 out of those 5 things, I think you should really consider whether you even start a relationship with somebody. Like if you are struggling with, here, let's pick one. If you're struggling with the social aspect, and you don't really have a lot of friends, and you don't know how to commit to community, and you struggle to keep close friendships around, that is something that you need to fix before you get into a relationship. Again, because we date to marry, and we want to be able to marry into a relationship where you guys are feeling solid in your social lives outside of each other, right? Because, well, you know what that seed leads to is like over dependence on each other, or one person's over dependence on the other person while the other person feels suffocated and they want to leave, right? And if physically, if you are not stable physically and you're getting sick all the time, or you feel really lethargic all the time, you can't move as well as you want to, if you're still healing from a surgery or something like that, physically, if you are not able to be there for that person, especially like in the beginning, like I think once, if you're married and you get an illness, I think that's different. Like marriage is different, but like to set the stage of like, hey, I want to be the healthiest person I can for this person, right? If you're not healthy, you have to fix that before you move. And obviously that stability is what allows you to be a safe space, right? Where, again, you don't want to be in a relationship with someone who is unreliable, who is unsafe, who is unstable. So why would you make someone else succumb to that, right? And this is just like a kind of, I don't know if it's brief. I don't know how long I've been filming for, but like this is like just a good general 3-pointer for things that I feel like I said, there is the relationship that you want, but then there's all this other stuff that you need to have before you even pursue or even think about having a relationship. And if these, and there's, it's very attainable. Like these 3 things are not impossible, but you just have to start now. If you're like, I really, really want to be in a relationship, then you better get started on these things. Get a job, go to therapy, reflect on the different areas of your life that you don't feel stable, and work on those things. And what's beautiful is that God will work through all of these things. He will be your guide in all of these things. And it's not that you have to work so hard and you have to figure all this out. It's like God wants to hold your hand and be like, hey, like in your singleness, as you work on all of these things as an individual, I will reveal them to you. I will help you. Let me help you. Right. And that's why I think if you feel like God's holding you back from being in a relationship and not sending your person, maybe very possible. But it's because there's all this other stuff that he's like, I want to experience this with you, just you and me, before you're able to, or even wanting to do this with somebody else, right? And how good is it that God protects us from relationships that we might even set up in flames and hurt people and hurt ourselves. And me, when I look at my past relationships, I'm like, phew, like, like praise God, because I think I jumped into a lot of relationships that I wasn't ready for, because I didn't have any of these things, right? I didn't have any of these prerequisites, right? And I truly believe that one of the hardest things, the reason why people jump into relationships without these prerequisites is because they're impatient, because they want to satisfy their flesh before they enter into something because a relationship and marriage is God's will, right? But he doesn't want you to do it just because it satisfies your flesh. He wants you to do it because it is a dying of your flesh for somebody else. And it's another experience of his love, right? And I think that's why it takes the laying down of your flesh of just wanting to jump into a relationship and feel all of that like good, cuddly stuff, and sacrificing that to become a person who is ready to do that in the most holy way. And one thing that really kind of, I think I took as a perspective in my singleness, that supported my thriving in that season, was singleness is really being set apart. I think in a world that is obsessed with being in relationships and uses sex and love and all of that stuff to tempt people, I honestly think a season of singleness is a time when you can be so easily set apart from the rest of the world, you know? And this is why, because when Jesus was in Gethsemane and he, was on the road to the cross, and he was alone. And that's the thing, like a lot of his ministry, he was with his disciples. He had everyone around him. He had crowds around him. And there was moments when he was intentionally by himself. But when he was on the cross, Jesus was alone. The only person he had was the Father. He was truly just on his own. And Jesus on the cross was the pinnacle example of love. Isn't that crazy? It wasn't him marrying somebody. It wasn't him going off and, falling in love with some other lady. It was him dying on that cross and him being alone and him being set apart from everybody else who, was amongst the crowd. That was the pinnacle example of love. And I think in the Christian life, being set apart does kind of like require you to be able to stand alone. Like, I think one of the greatest, and I think that's why people like in the world, I think we tear down the idea of singleness because it's like, oh, it's a shame. But that's the thing. I think God is upside down, where Jesus never got married. Jesus never like focused on, okay, which one of these ladies am I gonna, wed? For him, it was like, okay, like I'm gonna be set apart in this time to do the will of God. And I think being single is kind of the default. Like, that's how we're born. We're born default single, right? And even in our walk with God, like I think at the end of the day, we always say when Jesus returns and it's judgment day, the only person who we're going to be responsible is for ourselves, right? And I think there is something beautiful about being able to fully experience God to the fullest in our singleness. And if you're just trying to be in a relationship because everyone else is, and it kind of feels lonely because everyone else is, take that experience and reframe it as you being set apart. Right? I'm being set apart right now. And what am I going to do with that? Am I going to do that just like to not be set apart? It's like, no, I want to be like everyone else. I want to be in a relationship. I want to be quote unquote happy. I want to, be married. I want to be like everybody else. But that's the thing. God's like, no, I'm setting you apart for this moment right now. Do you not see what I'm trying to do? Again, all that other stuff. Right? And I think that sense of dependency on somebody else to make you feel fulfilled is not what the Lord wants you to. He doesn't want that to be the foundation of your future relationships, but also he doesn't want that to be your life at all, right? To feel dependent on somebody else to make you feel loved and cherished and all that stuff and worthy, right? But he's doing something in you. Like he's creating some new character traits. He's creating some new tolerances, something new. He's doing something new in you. And I used this example in a conversation I had recently with a client, actually. She watches the pod, so shout out to you. You know who you are. But I was like, when I sometimes go to movies alone. And I had this one moment where I was at church and I was going to watch a movie by myself afterwards. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go watch a movie. And my friends were like, oh, who are you going with? And I'm like, by myself. And they're like, oh, okay, have fun. And I was like, I am so happy that God had worked in my heart to be so satisfied with enjoying being on my own, that kind of reaction doesn't make me feel more alone than I should. Like, he has created in me a heart of stability and confidence within myself, that me doing an activity on my own is not a hit to my ego. It does not make me feel less than or less worthy because I choose to do something for myself and on my own. And I'm happy about that. And what's sad on my part is that a lot of people don't have that same feeling, where it's they really want to do something, but they miss out on life because they're waiting for someone else to do it with them. But that's the thing. That's what Jesus doesn't want, is for you to feel dependent on somebody else for you to move forward. But he wants you to experience life with him, do the radical things with him, and experience life with him to the fullest without feeling ashamed for doing it on your own. Because imagine Jesus being ashamed that he's like the only person on the cross, right? To be like, oh my gosh, like no one's with me, right? Exactly. But anyways, I kind of went on a tangent there at the end, but I hope that you all know that it is not I'm single and I'm waiting for something to change, but it is I'm single and that's what I'm here for, and like I said, relationships, I love them. And I think there is just the beauty of being set apart in this world by being someone who's happy in singleness. That's you. And I can't even, like, I want to, share it to the best of my ability that it is possible. Some people think it's impossible to find joy in singleness. I'm like, but it is. And I'm trying to articulate it to the best of my ability. And I think it's when you start to find the joy in all the other things and not idolize a relationship, you're just like, all right. Whether it comes or not, I'm ready for it. But also I'm not like holding myself back and not living to the fullness of how God wants you to, because you don't have the one thing that your flesh desires, right? But yeah, so these are just my prerequisites and some of my thoughts on Christian dating. Happy Valentine's Day again to all of you guys. I love you guys so much. The Lord loves you so much. I rebuke whatever is happening outside because there's a lot of wee woos. I think it's ambulance. It's the police. Or nor. Oh, and they're just like covering the entire. Okay, that policeman was angry. I don't know what was going on over there. But anyways, I love you guys. And Jesus loves you so much. And I hope you're encouraged in this season to love the people, your neighbors, to love God in heart, mind, and body. And I hope you experience his love to the fullest as you approach his throne room. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day or night or evening, wherever you're at in the world. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.